Ashachiputram Patra Surupam Rupam Tasya Kachamuri Purya Maturim Goshtuvatim Radha Kundamakirivaram Ahoradika Hovarvasa Raktu Yasya Pratita Kripaya Shri Guru Tammanatosmi Gurave Gaurachandraya Radhikaya Tadale Krishnaya Krishna Bhaktaya Tad Bhaktaya Namo Namah Anandalilamaya Vigrahaya Himabhadivyatschavi Sundaraya Tasmai Mahaprema Rasapradaya Chaitanya Chandraya Namo Namaste Chaitanya Chandraya Namo Namaste Chaitanya Chandraya Namo Namaste Sham Sundar Khanda Shikhara Smarha Samurali Manohara Radhika Rasakamama Kripanidhe Supriya Charna King Kurim Kuru Tavaivasmi Najivami Tayavana Iti Vikyaya Devi Tam Namam Charanantikam. First of all, I bow down and I offer my heart like flowers, thousands and thousands of times, at the lotus feet of my holy master, my supremely worshipable spiritual Gurudev, Asmadeva Paramaradatam Guru Pada Padma, Nitya Leela Pravishta Om Vishnu Pad, Ashtota Rasato Sri Rupanugachari Varya, Srila Bhakti Vedanta Narayan Goswami Maharaj. Secondly, I offer my pranam at the lotus feet of my Guru's Guru, my Param Gurudev, to Srila Prabhupada, and to his Guru and all the great spiritual masters going back thousands of years directly to Sri Krishna himself. My pranam to all the great masters. And finally, my pranam to all of you, my very dear brothers and sisters. So today, our subject is the mantra, the science of sound and consciousness. I was not expecting that almost everyone who will come will be a very serious practicing devotee. So I have given something for the general person, how to make a bridge from the current worldly and material conception to our Vedic paradigm. But I dare say there may be something in here that will be new also to the devotees. First of all, mantra, the science of sound and consciousness. There are two ways that we can study this subject. The first is directly to explain what is the science of sound and consciousness. And the other is to explain what is not the science of sound and consciousness. So, because in modern times people have a particular worldview, it's necessary to describe how this worldview is insufficient and it does not account for the true nature of sound and the true nature of consciousness. So what is the modern conception which is the prevalent that we find if you go to any scientific department in a university and you study psychology, neurology, anthropology, sociology, all of these subjects, then the basic premise is that we are just physical beings. Physicalism. It's not a new idea. Even way back at the time of the ancient Greeks, Democritus, he presented the idea that everything is just atoms in the void. Everything is just particles moving around in the empty space. And by the connection of these particles, by various configurations of these particles, our bodies have come about, and consciousness is an emergent property of the brain. So this is the modern approach to understanding consciousness. They think if we examine the brain, somehow we'll find out how this consciousness comes about from the physical elements. And what is sound? In the modern idea, sound means that air molecules are moving. They're vibrating, right? And then this vibration shakes the skin in your ear, your eardrum. And then this is transferred into, in other words, the vibration of the eardrum makes an electrochemical signal. And so whatever the sound is now encoded in that electrochemical signal. And then that's sent to the brain. And then when that signal arrives at the brain, then it's decoded, and with a little bit of magic and hand waving, you hear a sound. Actually, with a lot of hand waving. There is really no explanation. It's on, oh, that's the way it happens. But don't question it. Have another coffee. Yeah. When the intelligence is in a state of constant stimulation, passionate, having worldly objectives, then the intelligence tends to create what is called in the Yoga Sutras, Vikalpa. Is anyone familiar with the Yoga Sutras? Yeah, okay. So Buddhi, intelligence, which is a rajasic transformation of ego. It has 5 vrittis, and one of them is called Vikalpa. So Vikalpa is the creation of non-correlated thought constructs. We construct something abstract in the mind that really has no correlation in the physical world, but we project it onto the world. It's a concretization. We make our abstract concepts, which are quite wrong, concrete, that they really exist in the physical world. And so the idea that sound is coming from the shaking of the eardrum, or the idea that consciousness is an emergent property of matter, these are such vikalpas. Yeah. So only those who don't live in a state of constant physical stimulation, those who have a life of detachment, they have asceticism, they have the sattva-gun in their consciousness, then they become free from these non-correlated thought constructs, and they can see clearly. So, but if you're always on the phone and you're always jacked up on caffeine, then the mind is always flitting and creating these vikalpas and can never come to a clear understanding of the subject. And of course, none of you are like that, I know. So, I just want to look briefly at what the science of sound and consciousness isn't, and just make it clear before we come on to the actual Vedic paradigm. So, let's go. There we are. So here's just a little biological diagram that shows how the senses come in contact. There's a finger there. The finger comes in contact with something. It may be hot, it may be cold, it may be hard or soft. And then the nervous system translates that. It becomes encoded in the form of a electrochemical code. And then that code is passed to the spine, and the spine carries that message to the brain, and then a bit more magical hand waving, and you experience, oh, this is hot, or this is cold, or we experience pleasure or pain. This is the idea today. However, we should understand that this is completely impossible. This is not how perception works. This is not how consciousness works. And we want to just briefly demonstrate that. The thing is that the impossibility of subject-independent encoding. You see? Because only a conscious being can attribute value to any configuration of matter. We'll try to make it clear with a little demonstration here by discussing the locus of meaning or the locus of value. So, there, when you're a child, then your parents and your teachers, they write and they say, this word means cat, right? This word means cat. Is that correct?
Yes.
Where is the locus of meaning? Does this word mean cat? Or is it just some black scribble on the wall?
It only means cat when you put the letters together and make them say cat, right?
So the C by itself is C. But what if you're Chinese and you don't know how to read English? Then is the C a C? The C is not, it's not anything. You see, nothing physical in this world embodies a value or a meaning. The value and the meaning is in our consciousness, and we're projecting it, and we think it's in the object. And because our intellect projects this abstraction onto the world so quickly, we don't notice the mistake we're making. So in Sanskrit, the initial mistake is called Brahm. The projection of a misconception onto the world is called Brahm. And when you don't catch yourself doing it, that's called Pramada. Pramada. Brahm, Pramada, Vipralipsa, Karnapatav. These are the 4 psychological defects of the conditioned soul by which he cannot get out of illusion. They're very deep. So it may be that you may be subjected to them somewhat. So if you'll hear very carefully this Brahman Pramada, inattentiveness, and the projection of abstraction onto the world, it will go away. Because atheism can only survive by this projection of the impersonal conceptions onto the world. Otherwise, when the consciousness becomes cleansed of these things, then the fact that there is God, it becomes completely obvious. It's staring us in the face. The atheist will say, where is God? And if your consciousness is pure, you'll say, where is not God? There's nowhere where God is not present. So, okay, let's test it a little bit. Here we are. There. Here's a symbol. We're just giving an example. Here's a symbol. These shapes on the wall. And we think it means cat. It's referring to this fellow here. There we are. Now, there's you. The question is, where's the locus of meaning? Is the meaning in the object? Is it in the symbol? Or is it in the head of the person who's connecting the symbol to the object? Right? So the locus of meaning is in the person's consciousness. It's not in the object. There's no attribution of value to any configuration of matter without consciousness first. So there's no question of encoding and coding. Actually, there's no question of coding and encoding. If there's any code anywhere in nature, there must be a consciousness first. Our consciousness and, of course, supreme consciousness. So I'll give another example just to make it really, really clear. Okay. Now, you see that there? What does that say? Cat. Right. Huh? No, that's Chinese for dog. Huh? You see? This is Chinese for cat. There we are. Okay. So, it just shows you that the configuration of matter, it doesn't have it. It's arbitrary. We project the meaning onto it. But because we learn from each other, we learn from our teachers, then it just becomes a habit that we don't think about. And these lines mean this, these lines means that. So we develop the idea that physical entities can encode meaning, but they cannot. And the implication of that is that any sound which is touched by our senses turned into a code and sent to the brain. No, that doesn't happen. It can't happen. It's impossible due to the impossibility of subject independence encoding. So sound and consciousness is really something else. We'll give another example. Here we are. What does that mean? America! Come on, everyone. USA! USA! One of our colonies.
Oh.
That was a joke. So, here, that is actually a flag. It's just a piece of material, right? If, let's say, you were from another planet and you saw this piece of material, you think, well, what is it? Is it a handkerchief for a giant? Maybe it's a tablecloth? Is it a bed sheet? It could be anything. Only because you have learned from others by the social conditioning, you see that piece of cloth and you think, no, it's not a bed sheet, it's not a tablecloth. It means America. That's what it means. But the locus of meaning, it is not in the object and not in the symbol. The locus of meaning is in the subject. But just because we are rajasic, because our intellect is engaged in vikalpa, we always project abstractions onto the world and think it's out there when actually the meaning is with us. So there we are. We think that the meaning is in the symbol, but the meaning is actually, there we go. The meaning, the value attribution remains with the conscious being, but he's projecting it onto the world. So what does this mean for consciousness? Because the general idea is that so many messages are coming from all of our senses. They're encoded and they're sent through the nervous system. Then they come to the brain. And then by some configuration of matter in the brain, then consciousness appears. So consciousness is the product of encoding. This is the material conception, and it just goes unquestioned in all the departments of psychology, biology, neurology, anthropology. This is the state of knowledge in this Kali Yuga, in this dark age. So, the impossibility of subject-independent encoding. There was a German philosopher in the late 19th century, early 20th century, named Brentano. And Brentano noticed this. He said that it seems to me that there's no way to ground meaning in a physical symbol. If you make a physical symbol, and you say, so you have a cross like this, it means plus. How can you ground the plus meaning in the physical symbol? You can't ground it there. It's not possible to do. And so he said that because human beings, conscious beings, are always filled with meaning, we have purpose, we have intentionality. And because we are the locus of meaning, but matter, we cannot ground any meaning in matter, it must mean that consciousness is immaterial. Consciousness is not material. And he said that even though himself, he wasn't really a spiritualist person, he leaned towards the material point of view. But he was trying to prove, how can consciousness come from the brain? And he came across this problem that if there are so many symbols being processed, and this process leads to the consciousness, I don't think that theory is going to work, because there's no such thing as a symbol without consciousness first. Consciousness is the precondition for a meaning-carrying symbol. And therefore, the brain is not the product of consciousness. But consciousness is its own essential element in existence. It's a separate element which functions through the physical body. So one may say, well, if you smash someone's head, then they become unconscious. Okay, that's okay. We accept that the brain and the nervous system is, in this world, in the conditioned state, it is a necessary cause for the manifestation of consciousness, but it's not a sufficient cause. Just like if you have a radio, if you want to hear the music, then the radio is a necessary cause. but it's not a sufficient cause. Because if there's not a musician somewhere broadcasting the music, you also can't hear it. So the body and the brain, it's like a radio. It's necessary for consciousness to function in this world, but it's not sufficient. It cannot bring about the actual experience of subjectivity, intentionality, conceptuality. These are all the characteristics of Atma, what is called in Sanskrit Atma, the soul. So Franz Brentano, he called this subject the symbol grounding problem. If you cannot demonstrate how you can physically ground a meaning in a physical symbol, then there's no way of explaining consciousness in a mechanistic or physicalistic way. The physicalist paradigm completely collapses. So he posited this at the end of the 19th century. Now, if you still think that consciousness is material, that it's mechanical, that arises from atoms moving in the void, then this is just the basic challenge. If you want to prove that consciousness is actually a physical phenomena, then at least you should prove in principle that a symbol can have a meaning grounded in it. So many philosophers, all the top analytical philosophers throughout the entire 20th century and until today in the 20th century, according to the Encyclopedia Britannica, they said, despite the concerted efforts of many philosophers during and since the 20th century, no one has succeeded in refuting Brentano's thesis of the symbol grounding problem. So if you still want to prove that consciousness is material, then good luck to you. Because all the greatest analytical philosophers for over 100 years have tried and failed, and quietly just swept the subject under the carpet. Okay, let's not think about that. Have another coffee. So it's a travesty. It's actually a travesty that the entire scientific and modern educational system is based on materialism and physicalism, when there's no evidence. And if a person is just calm and thinks deeply about the subject, then they can clearly see that consciousness must be immaterial. It cannot be a material thing. It must be transcendental. It must be spiritual. But that's it. Everyone goes to Starbucks on the way to work. And in this way, the illusion goes on. The illusion goes on. So this is why it's necessary to hear from Guru, from a transcendental teacher, and learn the Vedic knowledge. Because from this we can rise up out of the vikalpa, the creations, the abstractions of the rajasic, the passionate intellect, and come to the platform of pure knowledge. So now, where are we? Physicalism is based on a cognitive error. That's the takeaway from this discussion so far. The materialistic conception is based on cognitive error, which in Sanskrit is called Brahm. Right? So, the psychology of illusion. Now, we'll come to the actual science of sound and consciousness. For that, we'll have to become familiarized with the very basics of Vedic ontology. According to the Vedas, we have to understand the nature of this world in terms of, there's a stratified model. We call it a stratified model. There are layers of existence, each one being more subtle than the previous one. And so you'll find in great Vedic scriptures like the Srimad Bhagavatam, in the 3rd canto of Srimad Bhagavatam, again in the 11th canto of Srimad Bhagavatam, there's an elaborate description of creation, the process by which this world is manifest. And the reason this description of creation is given is to familiarize us with ourselves. Because all the elements that you find in the universe, they are present within your gross and subtle material body. Within the psychological body and the physical body, all the elements of the universe are there. So when we learn about the cosmology of creation, we're actually learning about ourselves. Not the spiritual self, but the covering, the vehicle of ourself, by which we are traversing this path of life today. In one sense, the universe is a macrocosm, and our physical body is like a microcosm of the universe, because the same elements are present there. So, don't take this as only a cosmology, but it is an investigation into our own condition now. Because we are souls, but at the moment we are embodied. We are spiritual beings embodied in this world. So what is the nature of our embodiment? It's very important to understand. Otherwise, we identify with the embodiment and think that the embodiment is the self. And that's avidya. Avidya. Vidya means knowledge. Avidya is the opposite of knowledge, nescience. The basic principle of ignorance is misidentifying the self with the physical and psychological coverings of the true soul. So, this is why this is important. So we'll just begin here. There I'm highlighting Atma. So Atma is the soul, it's spiritual. And now, what we will look at is the realm of matter. According to the Vedic paradigm, the original submaterial energy is called Prakriti. Have you heard of this word? Prakriti. Yeah. So the prefix pra means prakrista, excellent. And kriti means accomplished. That energy which can accomplish wonderful things is called Prakriti, or nature. So we're all in agreement, right? That nature accomplishes wonderful things. So it's called Prakriti. Now this nature, Prakriti, in its most fundamental or rudimentary form, is formless. It's a pure potential. It's a pure potential energy. Do we have any Aristotelians here this evening? Any followers of Aristotle? No? We have any Catholic theologians here this evening? Thomas Aquinas? No? Oh, no. Okay. No? Just yogis tonight. Okay. So, but that concept is there also in the metaphysics of Aristotle, that on the most rudimentary level, the base level of matter is actually a formless, pure potential. And then this potential becomes actualized into the various forms of the world. So the Vedas also agree with that. And we think that the Vedic paradigm, being much more ancient even than the writings of Socrates and Plato, Socrates didn't write anything, but Plato and Aristotle, being more ancient than them, it seems that there was some cultural and philosophical exchange between ancient Greece and ancient India, and some influence came there. So, the basic level of matter is a pure, undifferentiated potential. And in this pure potential, there are three gunas. So you old yogis, I probably don't have to explain that. Has everyone heard of the word sattva, rajas, and tamas? Yeah? Raise your hand if you don't know. I'll quickly explain it. Okay. So, actually these words, sattva, rajas, and tamas, they've become so popular now in the West. They're even in the Oxford English Dictionary. Yeah. So, basically, if we look around us, we see that first things don't exist, and then they come into existence. The creation process goes on. And then they're sustained for some time, and then they dissolve. Everything around us is like this. It's not something that we like to think about, because it may send us into an existential crisis. Like Jean-Paul Sartre, nausea. But yeah, we're in quicksand. There's no place where you can there's no secure place where you can keep your feet. Everything around us is melting in real time, and eventually will disappear, leaving behind not a trace, like a dream, and game over. But actually not game over, because then you have another life, and the problems continue. But yeah, there's no... Our great guru, Prabhupada Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Thakur, he used to say, if you see the world honestly, without it being covered by fantasy and ambitions and dreams, then you will wet your couch with tears. Huh? That's from the Psalms, actually. You will wet your couch with tears and pray to God, oh my Lord, please give me shelter somewhere. Give me your shelter. Yeah. So, in this pure potential energy, 3 gunas are there. They are Rajas, the energy of creation, Sattva, the energy of sustenance, and then Tamas, the energy of destruction. So, by the interplay of these 3 energies, everything is going on around us. So, before the creation, these 3 energies are in equilibrium. They're completely in equilibrium. But when the Supreme Lord, Vishnu, he wants to create the world, by his glance, he glances and breaks the equilibrium of Prakriti, and it begins to vibrate. And now the elements begin to manifest. So the first element that manifests is highly sattvic. So sattva, the mode of goodness, the mode of balance, it's luminous, it's bright, it's still, it's niskriya, it's without passion, it's without karma, without activity. And so the first element that comes is very bright, still, lucid, and it's called Mahat, or the Mahat Tattva. So, this element is also present in our astral body, in our psychological body. So the portion of the Mahat Tattva, which is present at the very depth, as the foundation of your subtle body, it is called Chitta. Chitta. Right? Who are the students of Yoga Sutra here? Yes, you. Yogas Chitta Britti Nirodha. So, it is called Chitta. So here we are. Chitta. It's very bright, luminous, very still, and that is the core of our subconscious mind. But then Rajas appears, the mode of passion. And the Chitta begins to condense. So what we have here with all the elements, everything in the universe is a condensation of our deepest psychological element. They become grosser and grosser, just like, let's see, in the air around us, there's so much water, right? What's the percentage? Biologists, it's about 73, about 73%. Water in the air, but you can't taste it, you can't see it, you can't drink it. You can die of thirst being surrounded by 73% water. But what happens when there's a change in atmospheric pressure? Then that water which is in the gaseous state, it becomes vapor, becomes a cloud, and now it's visible. And as the atmospheric pressure changes, then it becomes liquid. And then if it gets really cold, it becomes snow and ice. So what we're discussing here is one thing. We're discussing water, but it goes through these phase transitions. Right? So in the same way, everything in the universe is simply the phase transitions of the Mahat. And everything in the universe of your body is simply the gradual condensation or the grossification of the most subtle element of your astral body, Chitta. Understand? So when the Chitta condenses, it becomes at first it was very light, like that. There you go. Sun God is helping me with this lecture today. Thank you, Suryadev. So the Chitta is very light, but then it condenses. It has no motion, but now it condenses and Rajas, passion appears, and passion, it has motion, movement. So then that finest first principle of movement in the universe, it is called the Sutra Tattva. Sutra Tattva, but it has another name that you may have heard of, Pran. Have you heard of this word Pran? Yeah? Many people speak about Pran. But what is it? Today we're discussing ontologically what really is Pran. So it's the first element in which the power of motion, or Kriya Shakti, the power to act, appears. So then, this Sutra Tattva, it condenses more. And it, by the influence of Tamagun, the mode of ignorance, it becomes inert, it stops moving. And essentially what happens is this. All of your thoughts, all of your perceptions, and all of your feelings are simply movements of pran in your pre-egoistic mind, in the chitta. So when pran moves in the chitta, it's called a vritti, chitta vritti. In the Yoga Sutras, yoga is defined as yogas chitta vritti nirodha. Yoga means the process by which you control and you subdue the chitta vrittis, the movements of pran in your mind, which are producing all of your worldly experiences. And then you can go into samadhi. You can go into trance. Understand? So not only our thoughts are chitta vrittis, movements of pran, but also our perceptions. Our perceptions are movements of pran. How does it happen? It's like this. If you take a camera and you point it at something, then what happens? You see that the screen of the camera modifies and makes a model of what's in front of the lens. So in the same way, here's your lens. And when you point your lens at something, then your chitta modifies and makes a model of what is outside, the object outside. And your soul, which is a particle of spirit within inside, which is actually conscious, sees the model of the outer world in your own chitta. Huh? It might sound a bit weird, but this is the fact. That you're not actually seeing me as I am now, but you're seeing a modification, a facsimile of me within your own chitta. You see? And that's how perception works. So you may doubt it, but it can be proven easily. If you come with me and live in India for a few years, it's quite certain that after a few years you'll probably get malaria. So when you have a fever of about 104 degrees and the god of death is just knocking on your door, at that moment you start to hallucinate. And you'll see everything's moving. All things in the room are moving. Like that. But anyone else is in the same room, but they don't see the walls moving or anything. Huh? You understand? Yeah. It's just like, I know none of you have ever taken any drugs, but I've heard that if you take drugs, you can hallucinate. You start seeing everything moving. How is it possible that things out there are moving? Because what you're seeing is not out there. What you're seeing is the modification of your own chitta. Your pran is moving the chitta and making a model of the outer world, and your soul is seeing that. This is how perception works, according to the Vedic science. Now, when you look at something, and your consciousness modifies and makes a model of that thing, then if you turn your head and look away, then that model disappears, and now your consciousness will model what's in this direction. Right? But what happened to the previous model? It didn't disappear. It was stored in the subconscious mind. It remains in the chitta as what is called a sanskar. So when the chitta transforms and produces a perception right now, it's called pratyay. Pratyay in Sanskrit. And then when you look somewhere else, a new pratyay comes, and the old pratyay sinks into the subconscious mind. And it's still there. And sometimes those impressions come back up into the conscious mind, and that's what you call memory. Yeah, memory. So the memory may be powerful to varying degrees. So for example, you have in your subconscious mind the samskars, the impressions of hundreds and hundreds of previous lifetimes. Yeah, it's all there. And those impressions shape our personality. Though we may not remember the details, but the basic psychological patterns are still there. And this is why if a mother gives birth to twins, everyone thinks they're the same. But the mother quickly discovers that these are two completely different people. Why? Because even though that soul gave up the previous body, but he brought with him the astral body from the previous life. The astral body is very sticky. So even if you die, it will go with you to the next life. And whatever bad habits or whatever you have now, you'll have them again. So don't put it off till later. We have to try to face our demons and overcome them today. Don't put it off until tomorrow. So, what are we discussing? Oh yes, samskars and all of these things. Huh? This is very fascinating. Huh? Very important. We must, if we don't know this, we don't really know ourselves. And if we don't know ourselves, we can be tricked again and again by our own mind. The Vedas say we have no enemy out there. Don't point the finger at anyone, because when you point your finger to someone, there are 3 fingers pointing back at you. The enemy is only our own uncontrolled mind. If we can purify, this mind can be purified, then we will see the Supreme Lord, beautiful form of Sri Krishna everywhere, and be in a state of bliss. Without any disturbance at all. Even if someone will beat you, even if they'll crucify you. But you'll be in a state of joy. Because you realize that you are not this physical body. You are eternal, indestructible, blissful spiritual being. So, this is called Pran. In the Shvetashvata Upanishad, it says, Eisho nur atma chaitasa veditabhya yasmin prana panchada samvivesha pranaistitam sarvam utam prajanam yasmin vishuddhe vibhaktesha atma. The meaning is this. Eisho nur atma. You are Atma, the soul. And this soul is Anu, tiny. We are not God. Sorry to break the news to you. We are not God. We are very tiny. We are part like an atom, an indivisible atom of spirit. Eisho nur atma. Chaitasa veditavyo. Veditavyo means, and you must know yourself. Veditavyo. It is our duty to know, who am I? How is that possible? Chaitasa. Chaitasa means by the chitta. Our chitta, our subconscious mind, the basic level of the subtle body, is yasmin prana panchada samvivesha. It is filled with the movements of pran. Actually, this word pran, it comes from ana. And then to the word ana, then a prefix is given, pra. And so there, prana panchada, there are 5 types of pran. So when you add the suffix ut, it becomes udan. Up, apan. Vi, vian. Sam, saman. Like this. So these are the 5 types of, and pra, pran, like that. So the word ana, from this word ana, comes the English, because English is derived from Sanskrit. All the Indo-European languages, they come from Sanskrit. So ana, from this word in Sanskrit, ana, comes animate. What animates us? Though this body is matter and it's dead, it's lifeless, it appears to be alive because it's animated by ana. And this ana is of 5 types. Prana means taking in. Prana. Apa means pushing down. By the upper, then you can go to the bathroom. Right? The Vyan, there's the expansion. From the Saman, it is a circular in motion and it makes balance. Udan is up, goes up like this. So 5 types of pran, they manage all the movements, even on the biological level, on the level of the nervous system, on the molecular level. All the movements are done by pran, and all the movements of the mind also are made by pran. So in this verse of the Shvetashvata Upanishad, it is said, pranas chittam saram otam prajanam, that the chitta, the basic level of the mind of the living being, is otam. Otam means interwoven. Just like in a cloth, you see there are threads going this way and this way. So throughout the entire astral body, the subtle body, the mental body, the pran is interwoven everywhere, and there's pran, udhan, apan, saman, and it's causing all these waves and vrittis. So as long as these waves and vrittis are going on in the mind, then we experience bodily identification. So yoga's chitta vritti nirodha, yoga is the method by which we restrain all of this psychic turbulence, by which we restrain the mental modifications. And if someone does that, then Patanjali says, tada drastahu surupe vastanam. If someone restrains that mental turbulence, then they will realize, I am the soul. They become situated in their true spiritual nature. But if they don't, then what will happen? Vritti swarupyam itaratra. This sutra means, if the mind is always in a state of turbulence and modification, then you are bound, it is the default setting of the soul, to identify with whatever is going on here. So when the mind says, I don't feel so good today, then you feel, I'm not good today. You have the ups and downs, the dualities of happiness and distress, loss and gain, victory and defeat, honor and dishonor, all the dualities of the illusory world that drive us. So we'll identify with that for sure. So it's important that this pran, these chitta vrittis, they have to be controlled. And this is where mantra comes in. What is the meaning of mantra? Mananam trayate yasya tasya mantra prakirtita. That by which all the oscillations of the mind become controlled. One becomes tra, that is delivered. Tra means to deliver. Trayate, you are delivered, or you are trayate. Tra comes from this comes transport. You are transported, you go across the fluctuations of the mind and then become situated in spiritual knowledge. So how does mantra achieve these things? We'll come to that gradually. Okay, so now we're just going through the elements. First element is chitta. Then the next element is pran. The pran gives you perceptions, pratyai, and then those perceptions sink into your subconscious mind. And they're there and they're solid. They're solid now because they're fixed. And so it makes a darkness. When in your subconscious mind there are millions and millions of impressions of trying to taste and experience the physical world, then the consciousness, which was previously light, becomes dark. And that mass of impressions is now called ahankar, ego. So this is the origin of the ego. Our ego is a condensed mass of impressions of external physical objects, which are kept within the subconscious mind. So then, from that ego develops one portion, which is a little more sattvic than the rest. From that comes manas. So this element manas means mind. So generally, what a person calls their mind, that is the conscious mind that we're aware of now, is actually the post-egoistic mind. It's the mind that develops under the dark cloud of the ego. So generally when people are thinking and making decisions, it's all done beneath the cloud of ego. And what's above that? And the soul itself is out of their experience. So then the rajasic portion of ahankar is called buddhi. Buddhi means intelligence. It includes the power to recognize things. It includes the power of memory. It includes the vikalpa, the creation of abstractions, which are mistaken. And it also includes our states of awareness. For example, now you're awake. Some of you are starting to sleep a little bit. So try to. Yeah. Stand up, jump around. Yeah. Do Surya Namaskar or something. Try to stay alert. So the states of being awake and the state of dreaming and the state of deep sleep also, these are oscillations of buddhi. The intelligence is moving. When it becomes more tamasic, you go into deep sleep. When it becomes rajasic, then you dream. And when more sattva comes, then you wake up. But if when you're awake, you're still rajasic, then even when you're awake, you're dreaming while you're awake. You have the American dream. Always dreaming of some bright future where everything is going to be so wonderful. No, you're going to grow old. You're going to be attacked by so many diseases. It's going to be really painful. Gradually your teeth will fall out, your hair will go white, and you'll get a heart condition, and then you'll die. That's the future, people. Okay, so, but we always dream everything is going to be wonderful when Rajas is there in the mind. So it's necessary to become sattvic and sober and look life in the face. Spiritual life actually requires courage. It requires great courage. It requires conviction to be able to walk the path where millions of people are going this way, but okay, I'll go this way. Because we have heard and we've understood, and in our meditation we have seen clearly that the way of the world, enter by the narrow gates, because the gate that goes to hell is very wide and it's traversed by millions of people. Some great person said that once. So those who are going that way, they are like building their house upon the sand, right? The wise man builds his house on a rock. That means we invest in the eternal reality. If we invest our energy in the temporary things, everything will be lost, like a house on the sand. So, the buddhi intelligence makes these states of waking, dreaming, and deep sleep. That's the function. And so far, these are four elements, chitta, ahankar, manas, and buddhi. These are the subtle body, and all the functions, the movements of the subtle astral body are done by pran. Now we'll come to the gross physical body. The first element. Now, from Rajagun, from the buddhi, the layer of intelligence, manifest the senses. These are called kamindriya, the working senses. So the power of speech, the hands, the power to grasp, mobility, the legs, the power to move, reproduction, the genitals, and evacuation. These are called the karmendriyas, the 5 senses of karma, action. And also from Rajagun come, then here, the 5 jnanendriya. Jnanendriya means the knowledge acquiring senses. So these 5 knowledge acquiring senses are the sense of hearing, the sense of touch, sight, taste, and smell. According to Vedanta, these senses actually take the form of atoms. The soul is a spiritual atom and sitting in the heart chakra. And around the soul, there are 5 atoms, each one of the senses. And the pran sends the energy of that sense throughout the body. And so the soul takes on the idea that he's this big lumbering piece of meat. He's actually physical, spiritual, he's transcendental being, very subtle, very fine. But when the atomic senses are empowered by the pran to spread out, then it gives us this, if you like, it's really, people speak today about virtual reality. You don't have to make a virtual reality, you're in one. We're already in a virtual reality. The kingdom of God is the reality. This is the virtual reality, the world of Maya. Maya. Ma means not, this, not this. This is not what we think it is. It is only a reflection of the eternal truth. Can we get an amen from the angels again? There we go.
Haribo.
Haribo. So, now we've discussed the working senses and the knowledge acquiring senses. Now we come to the actual physical elements of the body. Then the next stage of grossification. Remember what we're talking about. We're talking about Prakriti. It's the potential material energy. And just as water goes through the phase transitions, this one material energy is condensing, it's grossifying, and going through the phase transitions from the subtle psychic elements all the way through to the gross physical elements. So now we come to the physical elements. And we have first the sense objects. And one of them is sound. So this sound, it's a sense object. It is called in Sanskrit tanmatra. And this is material sound. And then you have tactility, that you can feel things are hard and soft, hot and cold. And then form and flavor and fragrance. So each one of the tanmatras is a subtle form of a gross element. So here are the gross elements. From sound comes the element of space. Space. In Sanskrit, space is called akash. Akash, the ether. So this akash is very interesting. Huh? Am I going on too much? Is it too long? No? Can I keep going?
Just getting started.
Okay, good. Okay. Yeah. I'll give you another $20. So, space, akash. The definition of akash has been given in the Bhagavad Purana, 3rd canto, Kapil Dev's teaching to Devahuti. He says there, Bhutanam chidradhatritvam anta bahir antaram evacha pranindriya atma disyatvam nabaso briti lakshanam. The meaning is that akash, ether, it provides the chidra. Chidra means a hole. In other words, it makes a space in which all of the elements can move around. So the mental element and the pran, they're moving, but they need to be accommodated in something. So akash accommodates not only our external movements, but there is an akash in the heart as well. And it accommodates the movements of pran and of all of our thoughts and feelings and perceptions. So, this is very fascinating. For example, you know, in Bhagavad Gita, Krishna says, Shabda ke paurasham rishu. I am the light of the sun and the moon. I am the syllable Om in the Vedas. He said, I am the sound in ether. I am sound in akash. What he's saying is that sound is the subtle form of space. Space actually comes from sound in Vedic ontology. So the word for space here, for akash or ether in the Bhagavad Gita is ka, shabda ke. K is the locative case of ka in Sanskrit. So another word for space or akash in Sanskrit is ka. Ka. It is called ka. That is space. Now, I have asked this question. Does anyone know the Sanskrit word for happiness? Yes, yeah. Sukha. What is the Sanskrit word for distress? Dukkha. You see? So these are famous words inside. Sukha is happiness, dukkha is distress. But in English, or I dare say in other languages, when we say happiness, well, what does that word happiness mean? What does happiness mean? Does it mean like a smiley emoji? What is it? Is it just like a feeling that you get when you drink? Is it a feeling you get when you get paid?
Temper.
What is happiness? Everyone will have a different opinion of happiness. But the Sanskrit word happiness directly tells us ontologically exactly what happiness is. When we are concentrated on something, our mind focuses on something, then it begins to expand. And when the mind starts to expand, there's a feeling of relief. There's a feeling of ease. So sukha means the happiness or ease that takes place when sukha, your chitta, expands in the akash. You see? So when our chitta, our consciousness expands, that means it spreads out in the akash, then in Sanskrit it's called sukha. And so the Sanskrit word for happiness directly, ontologically and metaphysically explains what happiness is. It's just like, let's say if someone is watching a soccer match or something like that, what do? They feel so much happiness watching the sport. Why? Because their mind is concentrated on one thing for 90 minutes. They're just watching the ball go. You see, they forget everything, and the mind is so as soon as the mind starts to concentrate, then it begins to expand, and the person feels happiness. But then when the game's over, then his mind contracts again, and it comes back to normal, and then he's looking for his next fix. You see, so that's the problem with looking for happiness in external material things. If we practice meditation, if we practice prayer, and we concentrate our mind on Krishna every day, it just expands and remains permanently expanded all the time. So you experience automatically sukha. You experience joy automatically. And dukkha is the opposite. You know, when you feel anxiety, when you feel stress, it's like a type of mental claustrophobia because the chitta has contracted in the akash. The chitta has contracted, and as the subconscious mind and the conscious mind begin to contract, then the functions can't go on. You see? So the consciousness becomes more and more contracted until you become desperate, and even the whole spectrum of emotions disappears, and there's only two emotions left: lust and vengeance. Right? A very primitive person who's unhappy, it's because all their chitta vrittis, they cannot have the full spectrum of emotions and thoughts because the mind is become too contracted, too condensed, and only the primordial, very base instincts are left. You see? And so when we feel in anxiety, that is our chitta contracting, and we cannot think of the right answer what to do. And we become completely self-centered, like we're the only thing that exists in the whole universe. Why? Because the instrument through which we perceive everything has become contracted. It has become shrunken within the ka. So that is called dukkha, the contraction of the mind within the akash. So there we are. We just discussed space. So then the next element, the grossification, is air, and then fire, and then water, and then earth. So these 5 elements constitute the gross physical body. The earth element is very apparent in the physical body. The water is there, the fire of digestion, the heat. If you feel some warmth in your body, it's because the element of fire and so on. So we have just discussed now basically the subtle and gross anatomy of the covering of our soul. This is what we've discussed so far. Now, I want to discuss a little bit about the pranic system. Now, the pran moves in the mind and also overflows from the mind into the body, and the pran moves in channels which are called nadis. Nadis. So there are, according to Vedanta, 72,000 nadis in the body. The pran moves throughout them and organizes all our biological functions. But 3 nadis are prominent. So the main nadi goes from the Muladhara chakra to the Sahasrara chakra. That is called Shushumna nadi. And then you have the Ida, which goes from the left nostril, and then it goes through the chakras chaining size like that, down to the left testicle, or for the women, ovary, whatever. So that is called Ida. That is your cooling side, the moon side. And the right side from the right nostril going like this and down to the right testicle, that is the Pingala. That is the sun side. And so the pran is moving everywhere, but if we are not in balance, then it moves in phases throughout the day, in periods of roughly about 90 minutes. Every 90 minutes it will be more on this side and more on that side. You can test it right now. Just cover your left nostril and breathe in through the right nostril. And out. One more time. Okay. Now close the right and breathe in through the left. Okay. Did anyone notice that one side was more open than the other side? Yeah. Whose left side was more open? Raise your hand. Left side was more open. Whose right side was more open? Okay. So actually in pranayama, the yogis, they do the alternate nostril breathing to try to bring the pran so it's only moving in the middle. So it's in balance. It's mainly moving in the middle, because if the pran is moving in the middle, then the mind is in sattva, in balance. And if it's more to the right, then the mind will be rajasic, very busy, jumping here and there. And if it will go more to the left, then the mind is starting to slow down. And that's when, you know, those days when you put your keys down somewhere and then you can't remember where you put them? That's because you're on that side cycle. Then that's when we become not so attentive to what's going on around us and we make these little mistakes. So it's moving like this. But if a person is very sattvic, then the pran will be mainly in the center and they'll be very alert all the time. So now there are, here you can see the 7 chakras. Now we want to speak about sound. The material conception is we move our mouth and it makes the air shake and it rattles your ear. So we've already demonstrated that this doesn't work. This is not an explanation. This is a vikalpa. Because there's no such thing as the subject-independent encoding. So sound itself is the subtle form of akash. It's everywhere. Just like if you have a stone, there's fire in the stone. What is the proof? If you smash 2 stones together, then a spark will jump out. So there's fire there, but it has to be released. So in the same way, sound is actually in space everywhere. And when we manipulate the air in a particular way, then the sound, which was already everywhere, becomes released, just like fire is released from stone. This is why singers, if someone knows how to sing properly, then they make a sound. It's like a superhuman sound. You think, where is that coming from? Because actually, the sound is in the ether and they just know the art how to release it. You see? Now, how this sound is released, there are 2 types of sound. One is just, let's say, noise. And then there's articulate sound. In other words, language. So sound which manifests as language, it starts in the Mooladhara chakra. It starts down here in the Mooladhara chakra with a movement of pran. So the very first movement of pran in the Mooladhara chakra, when you want to speak something, that level of sound is called para. Para. And it's on the level of pran in the Mooladhara chakra. Then that pran, it rises up and it comes to the Manipur chakra. In that stage, sound is called pasyanti. And it's on the level of the mental level, on the level of manas, the mind. In other words, before you speak, you kind of internally, first you have the desire, and then you internally visualize what it is you want to speak about. So the pran takes a mental form, and then the pran goes up, and it comes to the anahata chakra, and now that level of sound is called the madhyama. This is all described by Sri Krishna in the 11th canto of Srimad Bhagavatam, and also by Sutta Goswami in the 12th canto of Srimad Bhagavatam. So we'll look at that later. So then madhyama, in the heart, now that movement of pran, which is first becoming pasyanti, visual, now it's taking on syntax. It's taking on a linguistic form. Because you can't just you have to have your nouns and your verbs and your adjectives and adverbs, all your syntax, subjects and objects and tenses and everything. So it's formulating, and then it comes up to the Vishuddhi chakra. In the Vishuddhi chakra, that sound, that level of sound is called Vaikari. And now the sound it has come from the level of Pran, Manas, Buddhi, and to the Indriya, to the vocal sense. And then that Vaikari comes out from the mouth. See? So this is how we produce sound. Any person, when they're speaking, this is how they produce sound, beginning from the first desire, the movement of Pran, and the visualization, the linguistic form, and then the actual sound comes out. Now, what we want to look at here is, here you can see, this area here is the totality of represents the totality of the chitta. So one portion of that is the conscious mind. You can see there, that's your conscious mind. That's what you are aware of right now. Then the rest, the larger portion of the subtle body is the subconscious mind. Now this subconscious mind also has two parts. This we call here the dormant impressions. You have impressions from when you were when you were a butterfly, when you were a whale, when you were a peacock, whatever. We've been through so many but those impressions are not active now. They're dormant. They're really deep because you've gone through the cycle. You've come to the human form, and so those impressions, they're dormant. So some of the dormant impressions, they come here and they become active impressions in the subconscious mind. And gradually, according to the stimuli that we meet in our life, they're triggered and they come into the conscious mind. You see? And so those impressions come into the conscious mind. It's just like, let's say, that you're wandering around one day and you see someone and Cupid shoots his arrow. Straight through the heart. Love at first sight. Why? It's because this person, either physically or psychologically, exactly resembles the impression you have of someone you're attached to in a previous life. And so this person triggers that sanskar. That sanskar comes into your consciousness and you remember all the wonderful, you don't remember exactly the details, but the joy that you felt before with that person. But I just have to warn you, this person may be completely different to that person. So you have expectation. But then the reality after some time may become something else.
You don't remember how it ended.
Oh, right. So, beware. Or it may be that someone may see a dog and the dog barks and they become terrified. Why? Because in a previous life they had a bad experience. Maybe they were mauled or bitten by a dog or something like that. So our attraction, that is called rag, and our dvesh, our aversion. You see? We're wandering through life under the control of attraction and aversion. We feel as if we are making decisions in real time. But actually, we're floating along and our impressions are coming into the mind and saying yes, no, yes, and no. And in this way, even though an ordinary person feels themselves to be free, they're exactly like a bull with a ring through the nose who's being dragged through their karma. Don't think karma only comes from outside. Karma comes from outside, but also from inside through the rising of our past samskars. And so this is what diksha, or the process of initiation, is about. The process of spiritual initiation is to smooth out, to remove those samskars which are controlling us. Though we feel to be free, but it is an illusion. We are in a state of extreme bondage. And so when a person surrenders to their guru, begins to practice bhakti, then instead of being under the control of the samskars, the impressions, they come under the control of the wish, the desire of Krishna. What does God want from me in this life? And so then instead of going down a tunnel, if you're in a tunnel, you can't go left or right. You just have to go where the tunnel is going. So everyone is kind of in a tunnel of their karma, their destiny. That's why an astrologer can look at your astrological chart on the day you're born and say, okay, this is where you get sick, and then this is where you get married, and this is where you have your first child. It's there. But we feel as if we're making the choices in real time now. But actually, we're just flowing through time in accordance with our karma. But we can get out of that tunnel. Karmani nedadati kinchu cha bhakti bhajam govindamadi purusham tamaham bhajami. Those who take up the process of bhakti yoga, their karma becomes burnt and they're actually jivan mukta. Even though they look like another person in this world. But they are liberated while still present here. They didn't go to the spiritual world yet. But it seems, actually they're already there. In their trance, in meditation, you can be there. But the physical body is still here. But this body is not under the control of karma anymore. And the symptom is that person doesn't do any karma. They don't do any worldly activities. They're only hearing, chanting, remembering, serving, always absorbed in the service of God. This is the symptom of Jivan Mukta, a liberated person. So, now you can see, when the samskaras come into the conscious mind, then the prana is activated, and the body is activated, and the senses go to work. This is how everything works in this life. So what is necessary, is some divine intervention. Some divine intervention is necessary, and this is what we want to illustrate here. If we look here, there is such a thing called aprakrita pran. It is not material pran, but aprakrita. It is not of prakriti. It is not the prana prakriti, the material pran from the mode of passion. It is called aprakrita pran, supernatural pran, transcendental spiritual pran. If we can receive this aprakrita pran, supernatural pran, and it will enter into our subconscious mind. It can override our chittavrittis. It can co-opt all of our thoughts and feelings and actions. And so we become spiritualized here in this life. So that is what mantra is. Mantra is aprakrita pran. It is a supernatural vibration. It descends from Krishna himself through the Guru Parampara, and then Sri Guru, from his heart, he gives that supernatural pran to you in the ear. And then when you begin to chant the mantra, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. At first, you do it like mechanically. It's just mechanical at first. But as we begin to surrender more and become more the sincere, then the aprakrita pran, supernatural pran, begins to appear in the Mooladhara chakra. Then the Anahata chakra, it goes to the level of the mind and the intelligence and comes out the mouth in the form of kirtan. So in the beginning, perhaps some of you were shocked how we were singing so loudly and dancing. But I promise you, there is a method in our madness. And that is the science of sound and consciousness that we're discussing this evening. What we are doing is making ourselves available to the supernatural pran that will come, and it will essentially hijack and co-opt our chitta vrittis. What is the advantage of this? Just rewind a little bit. Earlier we discussed how our perception of the world is caused by the modification of the chitta by the movement of pran. That's how we perceive the world. So just as we perceive the physical world by the movement of the pran that comes from prakriti, when the aprakrita pran of mantra takes over your physical pran, now your physical pran becomes under the control of the spiritual energy in the form of the mantra, so that gives you perception of God. As the material pran facilitates material perception, so the spiritual pran facilitates perception of the spiritual world, of Golok Vrindavan, of the form of Krishna, the qualities of Krishna and the pastimes of Krishna. And all the great saints for thousands of years, they have had this experience. And therefore, they live their life in such a way to share that experience and give that opportunity for others to develop a divine eye. Om Jnana Timarandasya Jnananjana Salakaya Chakshu Unmilitam Dena Tasmai Sri Gurave Namah. I bow down to my Guru because very mercifully I was born in the darkness of ignorance, but he has opened my spiritual eyes. So this is the science of sound and mantra. I'm just giving some evidence from Srimad Bhagavatam here in 11th canto. Shabda Brahma Sudur Bodham Pranendriya Manomayam Ananta Paragambhiram Durvigyam Samudravat. Shabda Brahma means spiritual sound. This spiritual sound is durbodh. It's very difficult to understand for the general person. But Pranindriya Manomayam, it manifests first on the level of pran, then on the level of manas, buddhi, and then on the indriya. Like this, through these levels. Here's another important verse. This is spoken by Krishna to Uddhav in 11th canto. Sa esha jivo vivara prasuti pranena goshena guham pravistaha manomayam shukshmanupeta rupam matrasaruvana itista vistaha. Now, I'm about to conclude now. I don't want to go on too long, but I want to share one point for those devotees who have been practicing bhakti for many years. So if you're new and you don't quite catch this, don't panic. It's understandable. But those who have been studying and practicing for many years, you may appreciate this point. Here, Sri Krishna is explaining, Sa Esha Jivo, I am Jiva. That means I give life to everyone. Krishna, God, is the life, the energy of everything. And he says, Bivara Prasuti. Prasuti means I appear in Bivara, the Mool Adar Chakra. How? Pranena Goshena. Gosh means sound and Pran means Pran. So I appear in the form of Pran in the Mool Adar Chakra. Guham Pravistaha. Manomayam. And then I come to the level of the mind. And then I take the form of Matra, Swara and Varna. So Matra means the length of a syllable. If you pronounce a word like Rama, Rama has two A's in it, but the first A is long, Ra, and the second A is short, Ma. So that's called Matra, the length of the syllable. So in a mantra, there is length of syllables. Swara. Swara means the intonation. And Varna, that means the syllables themselves. A, I, U, all the various syllables. So he's describing how sound, he appears himself on the levels of pran, manas, buddhi, and then comes out in the form of mantra. In other words, the mantra and God are not two things. This is what is very important to understand. The mantra is God in his sound incarnation. So it's called, you know this word, avatar. Avatar means the form in which God appears in this world. It's called avatar. So the mantra is called the Shabda avatar, sound incarnation of God. That is what is expressed here. Now a more esoteric point for the advanced students. You know, in the Bhagavad Gita, Krishna said, Janma karma chame divyam evam yo veti tattvataha chaktva deham punajanma neti mameti sorjana. One who understands the divine nature of my appearance and pastimes in this world will never take birth again. So what does it mean? Some people think Krishna is a human being because he was born. No. He is the Supreme Lord and he has only the Leela. It's a play. The pastime of appearing from Mother Yashoda in this world. He is beyond this world and he comes through the layers of chitta, buddhi and the senses and manifests in front of everyone in this world. About 5,300 years ago, the avatar of Krishna, or rather Avatari, the source of all avatars, appeared here and performed his divine play, which is just the play of pure love. There's no karma. There's no reward-seeking activities. It's a play of pure love. So, janma karma chanme divyam evam yo veti tattvataha. If a person understands that from the divine realm Krishna manifests and plays here, then if someone will realize this, they'll never take birth again. So how can we realize it? By the same ontological process that Sri Krishna appeared more than 5,000 years ago, he appears in the same ontological process, but now in the form of mantra. Just as then he appeared, but was visible to everyone, today Krishna can also appear and perform his pastimes, but it will only be experienced by the individual subject who is experiencing the appearance of the aprakrita pran. In other words, the beautiful pastimes of Krishna is not, you can't just look, darn, I'm 5,000 years late. I missed them. It's not like that. These pastimes are an eternal reality beyond time and space. And anyone, even today, can experience those pastimes by chanting the mantra that is called japa. We sing together. There are two types of chanting. One is congregational chanting, sankirtan, and the other one is our private chanting, for which we use a rosary, a japamala, a rosary. So, when we have a rosary, then every day we should sit very calm and still, like a statue, without moving, and chant the mantra. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. So, it's not quite japa yet. When is it japa? There's a definition of japa. Mano madhye stito mantro. Mantra madhye stitam manaha. Mano mantram samayuktam etadi japalakshanam. In Hari Bhakti Vilas, there is this said, put the mantra in your mind. That means only put the mantra in the mind. Don't put your dog, your shoes, your Instagram or anything. Only the mantra in your mind. And then put your mind in the mantra. Now with physical things you can't do this. If you have a big box and you put a small box inside, but then you can't put the big box inside the small box because, time and space. But with mantra you can do this. Put the mantra in your mind, Hare Krishna, and put your mind in the mantra and mix the two together, that they become completely one, and there's nothing in existence and no experience at all except for this vibration. And that is called japa. That's actually called japa meditation. Only just pulling the rope and snick, like this, and thinking about the things. That's actually not japa. So if Guru tells you should chant 16 rounds or 32 rounds or 64 rounds of a japa, that's what we have to do. And it's difficult because we have the bahimukata, that means aversion to God. That's why we're in this world. We're in this world because we have some aversion to God. There's some envy there in the heart. So when we try to just sink into the holy name completely, we keep coming out again. That habit is there, that bahimukata, the attachment to the external things. But don't worry, just close your eyes and go deeply into the union with the holy name and stay there. Don't worry. After an hour or 2 hours, when you open your eyes, everything will still be there. And if it isn't, doesn't matter. So, it's important. Chant japa every day, and what will happen? Gradually the mind will go through the stages of kshipta, that means grossly distracted. Muddha, sleeping, becoming tired and inert, mental inertia. Gradually, as you chant, if you're feeling tired, chant more loudly. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna. And then the state of vikshipta will come. Vikshipta means occasionally distracted. You're focused, you have concentration, but occasionally the mind is flitting a little bit. And then the next stage will come. It's called ekagrata. Ekagrata means one-pointedness. One-pointedness. And if you can go into that state of ekagra chitta, in that state, your chitta, that is the most basic level of the consciousness, is very still, and it's like a mirror. It becomes like a mirror. Chaito darpana marjanam. And this mirror is now clean. And when you chant Hare Krishna, then the reflection of the beautiful form of Krishna will manifest in the consciousness. And then, it's all true. I don't believe it. It's real. This beautiful boy playing the flute with the peacock feather in his hair, smiling with beautiful lotus eyes. He's Supreme Lord. And we can realize it. But we'll have to receive mantra from a qualified guru and understand the Nam Tattva, the principles of chanting the holy name, and practice every day. So some effort should be there, and on top of our effort, some grace as well, some mercy of God. And when the effort and the grace come together, then we are crowned with spiritual success and the vision of Sri Krishna. And that's just the beginning. And what happens next, we'll explain tomorrow. So everyone, please come to the Mantra Central tomorrow. Today was very technical and scientific for the general public, but now we know each other and we're all really close. Then tomorrow we want to go more deeply into the beauty and the sweetness of Sri Krishna and his loving pastimes. So, where are we? We probably have 1 or 2 slides left. Here we are. Krishna appeared in this Kali Yuga in the form of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu to show us the way to come to him. So he traveled everywhere with his associates, singing and dancing to popularize this theology. Actually, there's a word, there's a English, if you like, or Greek. There's a word, onomatodoxy. Have you heard of this word, onomatodoxy? Onomatodoxy means the theological principle that there's no difference between God and his name. While we live in the plane of duality, there is God and his name. But when we rise above duality, then we'll realize, hallowed be thy name. The most important principle of spiritual life is to sing and glorify the name of God. And within that sound, we will realize our eternal loving relationship. So Chaitanya Mahaprabhu came to popularize this path of onomatodoxy, and it began to flow in waves everywhere. And today that wave has arrived here in Syracuse. So now we can all swim in that beautiful wave of God's mercy in the form of the holy name. Gaur Premanande Hari. You see? You can read it one more time. Everyone, look very carefully and concentrate on each word. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama. You see how it works? Radha Krishna have appeared. Huh? There's the proof. So, just to conclude our discussion today, I want to say that this year is the 150th anniversary of my great-grandfather Guru, and he's also the Guru of Srila A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada. His name is Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati. So to celebrate his 150th anniversary on his birthday, I have translated some of his books and lectures that had never been translated before into English for the first time. So actually, the celebrations began last April, and on the beginning of the celebration, then we offered this. It's a very profound lecture. It discusses the science of sound, actually, in much more detail than I've discussed today. Today was just like introduction. And also many beautiful points about pure bhakti. It's quite astonishing to hear his words. It's a couple of lectures. One of them was spoken in the Royal Albert Hall in Calcutta in 1929 to a very large assembly of the top scholars, theologians, and academics of the day. And of course, at that time, Calcutta was the jewel in the crown of the British Empire. We have anyone from Bengal here today? Yes? Where are you from, madam?
Delhi.
From Delhi. Oh, very close to Vrindavan. You're my next door neighbor. Please come and visit our ashram in Vrindavan. So we published this in April, and then on his actual birthday, that was just about a month ago, in India, we offered this book, and this is a very simple book. It's called Vedic Wisdom Tales. Vedic Wisdom Tales. It has 34 short stories which come from the Upanishads, Katha Upanishad, Kena Upanishad, Chandogya Upanishad, from Mahabharata, from Srimad Bhagavatam, and other scriptures. And so they're simple stories even a child can read. But at the end of each episode, there's some profound teaching that gives us an ingredient that we have to add to our stock by which our spiritual life becomes successful. It's necessary for a successful spiritual life. We need to collect a number of ingredients. So each story conveys to us a particular swabhav or disposition, or a conception, or a mode of conduct. And when we collect them together, if we'll observe this, then for sure we'll find success in spiritual life. So we have this Vedic wisdom tales. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. We'll have on Radhastami, that is the birthday of Srimati Radharani, and in August we'll have a very big festival for 7 days for Radharani's birthday, and that will be on the island of Mallorca, an island in the Mediterranean. So we're opening a new Chaitanya Academy there. So if you get the chance, please have a holiday in a Mediterranean island. But a spiritual holiday there. So, and then I'll be returning back to India. And in the month of Kartik, which is October, November time, there's a special vrat, special vow which is performed. And we do a parikrama, that means a pilgrimage to holy places of all the pastimes of Krishna. So we invite devotees, if you want to come and spend a month on pilgrimage there, and we'll be there actually for 6 months. And there'll be a few other pilgrimages afterwards, but the main one is in the month of Kartik, October, November. So my highest gratitude to all of you for sitting and listening so patiently. When I see how attentive you are and interested in the subject, you inspire me. So I'm very grateful to you. Hare Krishna.